Hey, what's going on, gang? Nate on the Stone here. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the 92nd episode of The Rolling Stone. Hope again, as always, that you guys are doing well. Hope that you're all recovering from that ridiculous spring forward that we had last week. The older I get, the more ridiculous daylight savings time becomes in my mind, because there is absolutely no reason at all for it. If you really think about it, there's absolutely no reason at all why we even have daylight savings time. Ostensibly, of course, they say, well, it's to have more daylight, right, during the spring and the summer, which means that we'll save energy. And there are even some people who want daylight savings time to be made permanent. We would just be an hour ahead of the sun all year round. Never mind that in the dead of winter, like December, January, that means that it wouldn't get light until 8:30 in the morning. Sunrise wouldn't be up until 8:30 in the morning. Do we really want that? But people who propose this say, oh, it'll make everyone so much safer because there will be less darkness. Only in the summer. Only in the summer, not in winter, like we just said. And the big secret, the elephant in the room, of course, gang, is that daylight savings time doesn't make any extra light. There are still 24 hours in the day. Us flipping our clocks forward an hour does not change the rotation of the Earth. It doesn't change it at all. So it's completely ridiculous. It's just another attempt to control things. We want to pretend like we are the masters of time, because, of course, if we can master time, then what are we? We're just little semi-deified potentates. But that's another topic in and of itself. Hope that you're recovering from it, like I said. And now there is so much to talk about this week. It was really hard choosing stories for this edition of the Rolling Stone, but because it's just been that sort of a week. But we are going to start off with one of the big stories that just happened a few days ago, actually. Again, I'm recording this on Friday, March the 19th, 2 days after St. Patrick's Day. Happy belated St. Patrick's Day to everyone. And it is this. Tensions are now on the rise between the United States in one corner and Vladimir Putin's Russia on the other. And it really looks like Putin is going to win. As if we didn't have enough to worry about with the rise of the Chinese empire, the resurgence of the Chinese dragon. Now it appears that we cannot even stand up to Russia, which, technically speaking, at least in the imagination of the general populace, is still this third world country. Yeah, they were big at one time. Russia was big in the 20th century when it was the Soviet Union, but that wasn't because it was some technological utopian marvel that could steamroll everyone. It's because Stalin had his atomic spy ring, which then stole the secrets of the atomic bomb and later the hydrogen bomb, so they were basically a third world country with nukes. And that's one giant reason why we had the Cold War. They were able to really invade a lot of countries, the Soviet Union was, and we had to be very, very careful on how we retaliated, because, of course, there was always the threat of nuclear Armageddon. You have nukes, we have nukes, you better watch out, because otherwise we'll launch ours first before you can get yours out. So I think that we still have this mentality of Russia as a third world country, which makes this story even worse. Now, the story begins on Wednesday. The story begins this past Wednesday, St. Patrick's Day itself, the 17th, where the current occupant of the White House, aka President Joe Biden, did a interview with NBC News, in which NBC asked Biden about a declassified intelligence report. Now, this declassified intelligence report, per the Associated Press, maintains that Putin approved operations to help Trump against Biden in the 2020 election. Here's the first paragraph of this AP story. Quote, Russian President Vladimir Putin authorized influence operations to help Donald Trump in last November's presidential election, according to a declassified intelligence assessment that found broad efforts by the Kremlin and Iran to shape the outcome of the race. But ultimately, here's the key point, gang, but ultimately no evidence that any foreign actor changed votes or otherwise disrupted the voting process. So in other words, if we are going to take this report at face value, and the unfortunate reality, gang, is that anything that is announced by the government should be taken with, at the very least, a tablespoon of salt, probably even more. But if we are to take this declassified report just on face value, just accept it, then Putin okayed broad attempts by Russia to interfere with the 2020 election, but nothing was actually done. No one actually did anything. He gave the green light, and then no one acted on it. He said okay, but then he didn't direct it. Nothing happened. Nothing happened at all, which makes it very specious as to exactly how interested Putin was in interfering with the 2020 election. I mean, to give the devil his due, let me just say this out front here at the front of this video. I would not trust Vladimir Putin as far as I could throw him. So even after I get all jacked up and I do these without my shirt to get more viewers, after I'm able to do 300 Hindu push-ups a day and then 50 one-arm push-ups each, even after that, I wouldn't trust Putin as far as I could throw him. He is, after all, an ex-KGB man, meaning he's probably not your typical Boy Scout when it comes to the general niceties and just the usual nice way that we're used to living here, because we've gotten so civilized that any thought really of violence practically turns us off. And again, Putin is he is a devious man, and he is more than likely a violent man. Many of his political opponents have this interesting habit of getting poisoned and arrested on different charges. They're all criminals. Isn't that amazing? But at the same time, let us be absolutely clear. Let us look at the facts. Putin also, from being a KGB man, and from really being the power in Russia for the last 15, 20 years, he's no dummy. He is smart. He knows, along with every other world leader, he knows the situation here in the United States probably better even than we do, because he has that outside perspective looking in. It's always harder to actually evaluate what's happening in your own society because, of course, you are part of that society. It's much easier to see what's going on in a society when you're on the outside looking in. So Putin is smart. He has an outside perspective. And he is very, very cunning. He probably knew, after watching 4 years of Russia collusion, which again, there was no evidence for, he probably knew that all he had to do was to give the okay for there to be broad attempts to influence the 2020 election, and that's all that he had to do. The American left and the dynamics at work in American society right now would do the rest, and they have. They have. It's brilliant in a sense. You gotta tip your hat off to that. So anyway, Biden was asked about this new report, this declassified intelligence report. And this is what Biden said. Putin will pay a price. You will see shortly, he said, when he was asked about what would happen to Russia because of this declassified intelligence report. Let me repeat that. Putin will pay a price. He didn't have to close what price Putin would say per NBC News, only saying, you will see shortly. Okay? And then, of course, he said that Vladimir Putin has the soul of a killer. He said that one time, he looked him in the eye and told Putin, you have the soul of a killer. and Putin supposedly said, now we understand each other. Well, because of that, Putin, of course, responded to this attack. It's the best way to explain what Biden did. Putin responded to this attack. Here's a headline from NBC News. Putin says Biden's killer jab reflects U.S. history as Russia recalls ambassador. You heard that correctly, gang. Russia's ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Antonov. I know that I am horribly butchering his name. My apologies, Mr. Antonov, although I know that you will probably never ever see this video. He was recalled a few hours after Biden made this announcement. That is huge, gang. Countries do not recall their ambassadors from that ambassador's country unless there is some deep currents at work. That alone should make us nervous. But then, Putin said this. Putin said the legacy of slavery and the country's treatment of Native Americans weighed heavily on its dealings abroad. And then, per Fox News, Putin did something that was even, you just have to be in awe of this. Again, it's the intelligence of this that wows me, gang. Not necessarily because Putin did it, but simply because someone was able to so perfectly checkmate an opponent. So, Putin says, okay, that Biden's killer jab, calling him, Putin, a killer, having the soul of a killer, reflects America's legacy of slavery and the country's treatment of Native Americans. That in itself, he's playing right into woke ideology here. He knows what's going on. Again, he's seen the 1619 Project. He has seen the encroachment of critical race theory into every single nook and cranny in our society. He knows that if you paint anything with the brush of racism and bigotry and oppression, then that automatically has weight. He is playing the left's own game against them. It's brilliant. How do you respond to, well, I'm a killer? Well, obviously, this is because of the American mentality, which is based on oppression. He's picking on me because of the American mentality of needing someone to oppress. He is putting himself in the role of the oppressed. And then he did something even more brilliant. Again, the intelligence of this is what wows me. He challenged Biden to a live debate. He challenged Biden to a live debate that the entire world would be able to see. He said, the people of America, the people of Russia, they have a right to know where our countries stand in relation to each other. The people have a right to know. And again, I don't think I have to tell you why that move was so brilliant. First, because he hit Biden where it hurt. We are what? Almost 60 days into the so-called Biden administration? Yeah, just about 60 days into it. And Joe Biden still has not given a press conference, an actual genuine press conference yet, which is unheard of in American history. There is rumblings in the White House that, well, we are going to have a press conference one of these days. Soon. Yeah, as soon as they pick and choose who is going to ask what questions. And then they basically do with Biden the old, catechism routine. Okay, what's the question, Joe? Memorize the question. Now memorize the answer until he's like a parrot. Or Pavlov's dog. I hear this question. That means I give this answer. I hear that question. I give this answer. So, Putin hit Biden where it hurt the most, and he did something. He positioned himself in such a way that no matter what Biden did, Putin was going to come out the winner. Because, of course, if Biden accepted that challenge, we all know how it would end. Putin would make a laughingstock of Biden in front of the whole world. And of course, if the White House doesn't respond, which FYI, is currently what is happening right now. The White House basically is saying, the Biden isn't going to even give a response to that, to Putin's challenge, and by doing that, Putin wins again. Because, of course, if everything was on the up and up, if Joe Biden was a quote-unquote, not a normal president, but if he was actually a normally functioning president who wasn't actually degenerating mentally and physically right in front of the eyes of the entire world, then he would, of course, accept that. He'd say, oh, you're challenging me to a fight? To a verbal fight? Okay, tough guy, let's dance. But since Biden's not doing that, Putin wins again. Because Biden, by not accepting, is proving his weakness. He's proving his weakness. And that's really the main point of this, gang. Biden has always looked horribly weak in front of the rest of the world. That's just a fact. I mean, the man cannot speak. Just yesterday, I believe, which would have been Thursday, Biden had a mental flub, Freudian slip, whatever. He was starting to talk about President Harris and I, as if Kamala Harris is already the president. Like, he's not the president, okay? A normal functioning human being, just even of average intelligence, especially one who's been sworn in as president, not even quite 2 months ago, wouldn't make that sort of mistake. And he definitely wouldn't make the flubs that Biden has made continuously, even before he was inaugurated. It has only gotten worse. The entire world knows that Biden is weak. And this is why. That is what is so dangerous, because weakness always invites a challenge. You could make the argument like Vision says in, what is it, Captain America, Civil War, Marvel's Avengers 2.5, or whatever they really wanted to call it. Vision says at one point, towards the beginning of the movie, that the very strength of the Avengers invites a challenge. Okay, maybe you can, maybe you could maybe make an argument to that effect, since, okay, people then want to try and take you down because then, of course, he will be the toughest guy in town. But you still are in a position of strength to actually smack him down. Weakness, however, also invites challenge. Because if you're weak, if you are even perceived as weak, and with Biden, it's even more than perceived, it's knowing that he's weak. All of our enemies are coming out of the woodwork, and they are pushing and pushing and pushing to see how much they can get away with. Because they know that if it actually came to a showdown game, and I hate to be Debbie Downer here, they know that if it came to a showdown, Biden is so weak that he would be pretty much useless. We would, in an effect, be leaderless, because since there is no strong leadership in the White House, forget about Biden's, ideology and his having sold his soul to the left's ideology. Because there is no strong presence in the White House, whatever response the White House and the U.S. government in this case would give would immediately be broken up, because people, the different factions in the White House, would start squabbling, and they would try to scramble for power. There would not be a united countermeasure against whatever our enemy, whoever acted first, would cook up. That's the first danger. That is definitely the first danger. The second danger is much closer to home, but it's just as dangerous, maybe even more so, because again, it involves the ideology of the left. I have been seeing on social media people actually saying and believing that Biden is so cool because Biden so easily and so quickly got under Putin's skin and then quickly took on the role of the alpha male. Biden, in their actual, genuine, honest-to-God belief, Biden put Putin in his place. Biden proved that he is the alpha male. Unlike, Trump, Putin just had him on a leash. And we could say that this is just, the left being the left as usual. But this shows how deluded they are, gang. They honestly believe that Biden came out as the top dog in this verbal spar that he had with Putin, when, as we just went through, that's not the case at all. Putin cleaned the mat, I should say. Putin cleaned the mat with Biden, chewed him up basically and spat him out for breakfast for the entire world to see. These people, though, are so deluded that in their mind it's the exact opposite. Now, why is this dangerous? Well, this goes back to the contradiction and the tension between a secondary reality that ideologies always have to create to justify their ideology and, in a sense, make their ideology true, and reality, what is actually happening, how the world actually works, the facts as they actually are. Because reality is always trying to burst through the secondary reality. That's just the nature of it. What's real and what is true is always trying to get out. Which means, conversely, that we're in a never-ending sort of evolutionary cycle. The more that reality tries to break through the secondary reality, the more the secondary reality clamps down to keep the truth from actually penetrating it. And what this means in a soft totalitarian system under which we are now living, this means that the infractions and the thought crimes become less and less and less, meaning that you can depart, however innocently, however infinitesimally from the narrative, and you are now someone who must be silenced, because the slightest hairline fracture in the secondary reality might be enough for reality to come bursting through and just unraveling everything that the ideology has woven, stitched, and clamped together. Which means the harsher they are going to come down on speech, the harsher they are going to come down on what we write, the harsher they are going to come down on everything that does not align, everything that does not submit to them in order to keep their secondary reality alive. Because remember, if that secondary reality goes, they go. They have fused themselves so fully with it that if that secondary reality is shattered, it would be the same, it would be the equivalent of pushing them off a cliff. Their life, in a sense, would cease to exist, because their entire world, in a very real sense, would be destroyed. And that's the dangerous part here at home that this interaction between Biden and Putin has shown. That is story number one.